Hey everybody, so today we're going to start with a riddle, a question, a Zen koan, if you will, and then I'm going to break down two concepts that will help you think about or answer the question in a different way than you initially would. I believe so. So the question is, if you and your friend went to the gym and your friend went over to the kettlebell station and grabbed the heaviest kettlebell they could because that's how they roll, came back over, they placed both hands on the handle and proceeded to do a hard style or a sports style, whichever way the wind blows, kettlebell swing, and then they put the bell down, they turn to you, and they ask you a simple question. And the question is, what made the kettlebell move? So now let's talk about causes and constraints. And if someone were to ask you that question initially, your initial Newtonian conditioning might kick in. And if it's been a while since you've brushed up on Newtonian physics, let me summarize in a very straightforward manner. Newtonian conditioning is the idea, well, it's where humanity itself got the idea that the world, that the universe, functions much like a clock. Very mechanical, very machine-like, very cold and impersonal because that's just how it operates, like a robot would, so to speak. And if you've ever heard of the analogy, the pool table, you hit one pool ball into the other pool ball, and then that pool ball goes into the corner pocket and you win the game. Everybody cheers your name. That is cause and effect. And in fact, if you've ever watched The Matrix, excuse me, and if you've watched, I think it's the second one, Reloaded, where the Merovingian, the French villain, the antagonist to Neo, starts talking about cause and effect, and his claim is that this is the only driving force that matters in the universe. It's the only thing that actually matters. And in fact, humans are slaves to cause and effect because of our biological apparatus, as it were. But I'm going to prove the Merovingian wrong, and hopefully this will help give you another mental framing, another way of looking at what it is that you're trying to do when it comes to working out, when it comes to career, when it comes to any type of goal you have set. So let's talk about the flip side of causality, and I'm going to ask the question one more time. As it were, the friend puts the kettlebell down, turns to you and says, what caused or what made the kettlebell move? Obviously, you may answer, you picked it up, you swung it, you used your hips. You might emotionalize it and say maybe they had a hard day and that they wanted to get their aggression out doing hard style swings. But what else has to be true in order for that kettlebell to swing? And take a moment and think about it, because when the answer presents itself is so simple, but it's so brilliant. In order for that kettlebell to move, in order for that kettlebell to be swung, there has to be a kettlebell. Not only that, there has to be a floor. There has to be a gym within that floor or surrounding that flooring. The kettlebell has to have a certain shape, a certain design. The handle has to be a certain way. You have to have hands in order to do it. You have to be relatively injury-free. There's all these other things that come into play. So now we'll talk about causes and constraints. So obviously, causes, you know what that is. So a cause or causes are events that make things happen, right? They are events that make things happen. However, constraints are conditions that make those events possible. And if you think about that for a while, when I first started to think this way, or I first started to be able to categorize it this way in my mind, what happened, interestingly enough, was that I started to develop more gratitude, obviously on top of all of the practices you can do for gratitude. This is a very practical one, so to speak, because once you realize that it's not, obviously you do have actions, you do things, but in order for you to do anything that you do, anything that you want to make possible, there has to be constraints. And those are the conditions that make everything that you do possible. So there are two sides to this, because if you just solely focus on the mechanistic way of living, meaning like you do something, this happens, you do something else, that happens, your willpower, it's your force, it's your vision that does everything, everything else doesn't matter. You might find that you'll either get burned out, you become a little egomaniacal, right, where you think that you're causing everything, whereas the other aspect, you still have all of this cause and causality to draw from, but now you also have the fact that, wait a minute, there's an environment that I have to interact with, that if that environment wasn't a certain way, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I've imagined or I want to do. And that might be interesting to you because every day is a little bit different. And if your mindset, your physicality, your energy, your spirit's a little bit low, by focusing on the constraints, you might find that you are able to do what it is that you want to do without having to rely so much on the idea of that it's solely based upon your willpower. Because obviously willpower can be exhausted, it can be limited or diminished, and that's something that you want to keep an eye on. So if someone turns to you and they ever ask you the question of like, what made the kettlebell swing? Remember, it's not just because they swung it, it's because there's constraints around them that made that entire event possible. So yeah, hope that helps, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.